Welcome back to the podcast, Heal Without Harm. My name is Dr. Clayton Durr, physical therapist and the one bringing you the truth about the medical system. What if I told you that you would need surgery for your spine, daily prescriptions for your allergies, and even pills for your gut pain? And then you just simply proved it all wrong. Today's guest, Matt Magnuson, went from 20 years of meds, a devastating accident, to becoming an ultramarathon runner, business owner, and a recovery advocate. Matt, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, thanks, Clayton. Pleasure to be on here.
It's nice to actually be able to hear all these details because I've known you for a while now, but I guess there's a lot that I still didn't know about you. I know you're an ultra runner, but apparently you're also a DDP yoga instructor, and of course, everybody in Wichita knows you're the owner of iCryo Wichita West, and you have a story much deeper than I knew that also includes food, allergies, gut pain, and I would just love to hear more about it.
Absolutely. I love sharing this. I love what you're doing out there, Clayton. I think that there's a lot of good alternatives to what people have been told. I think that people can get better without pills, without surgeries. So I appreciate what you're doing out there fighting the good fight, and I appreciate the opportunity to tell a little bit about my story to your audience.
Let's get right into the weight loss aspect, because I know there's pictures. Actually, that's the only way I know that you were previously overweight was from pictures, because I've always known you how you are now. And so with you being overweight in the past, what was the highest weight you got to? What was your weight loss like? And then where do you sit now that you're an ultra marathon runner?
Yeah, good question. So the highest that I ever weighed myself was 237. I do think I was heavier than that at one point. What kind of was the catalyst is I knew I was 237, and one day I put on a pair of 38-inch pants and they didn't fit. And I had to go buy 40s, and I was devastated. And I went to Kohl's and I bought the two cheapest pairs of 40-inch pants I could ever buy and get down to 38. And then that's where the transformation journey began. Kind of happened in two phases, got down to about 165, 170, stayed there for several years, and then took it to the next level, got all the way down to 145. Keep in mind, I was a very skinny 145 with not a lot of muscle mass. So since that, adding in several years of strength training, I'm walking around most of the time around about 155, 158 today.
Gotcha. Yeah, the last time I was that light was when I did a men's physique competition, and it included 5 pounds of weight loss in the last day of cutting out water.
Woo.
So, no, that's awesome. And I'm curious, you told me a little bit off camera, but what was your motivating factor actually losing the weight other than the 40-pound or the 40-inch waistband that you had to accept?
Yeah, there were just two things that kind of converged at the same time. First off, my daughter was about to be born. I was going to be 36 years old as a first-time father. So, doing the math there, that's, a little less time to spend watching my daughter grow up in adult years than maybe somebody who has their first child in their early 20s. So there was that reality that was setting in. But there was also, at that point, being in my, mid 30s, my folks were, in their mid to late 50s. And I had noticed over the 10 years of that decade in their life that, that they were aging different than some of their friends. My folks tend to eat pretty clean, very active lifestyle, at the gym or at the park, 4 or 5 days a week, and, good mobility, good, visually looks like they have a very healthy BMI. And I noticed that their friends that they socialized with, people that I knew for 30, 40 years, were starting to look 10 years older than them, moving around slowly, needing canes. And it really hit me, if I want to see my daughter grow up, I want to walk her down that wedding aisle. If I want to see grandkids, and also if I'm going to work, 40, 50 years and then retire, I don't want to feel like garbage. I knew that if I wanted to fix those two things, it started with making permanent lifestyle decisions. Not, at that point I'd done yo-yo dieting. I've told people I've lost 300 pounds in my life. 30 pounds at a time, and then gain 30 pounds back. But, I knew that that whatever I did had to be permanent, and this is what I was choosing for the rest of my life.
What are some of the changes that you've experienced? I would say that's less than expected. So when you were in the 230s or 240s, because I know once you get to a number, you kind of just stop weighing. But when you're at your highest where you are now, what are some differences that one may not expect from being at a healthier weight?
Well, first off, I didn't expect to lose the allergies. I just, thought that, every spring and fall that my allergies were just going to be horrible for 2-3 months, that I was probably going to miss a few days of work, that I was going to have, severe sore throats and drainage. And that was just the way I was built, and that I was always going to live with that. I also just felt, lethargic at times, more brain fog than normal. There were just elements of my life that I just felt that were completely normal. And I also, excused myself out of things. I would see people that were fit and or maybe somebody who could run a half marathon or a marathon and thought, well, they got started early. I'm too late in life. I could find excuses for everything. So I would think that, out of the biggest thing that I learned out of the weight loss journey was the ability to eradicate excuses. And then the byproduct of that was being able to live a happier, healthier life. Like at the time, really, it was just, I was thinking, I just want to, I don't want to wear 40-inch pants for starters. So there's kind of that aesthetic. I don't want to be the chubby looking dude anymore. But, there was the motivation that I mentioned earlier. But I didn't really see a lot of the other benefits and all the other payoffs and how putting these simple habits in life go beyond just the weight loss and being healthy. When you decide, okay, I want to be healthy, I'm going to be in this regular workout routine. Well, when am I going to do that routine? I got to build discipline. I got to build structure. So the next thing you know, I'm a 4:30 guy. So I'm, getting this routine set up where I'm in bed at 9:30. I'm up in the morning at 4:30. And then all of a sudden I'm sitting down at my desk at work, 7:45, 8 o'clock, and I feel 10 times more mentally sharp in the day and ready to go. Whereas, before I lost the weight, before I started working out and had that discipline of healthy eating and exercise, I would sit down at my desk at work and just kind of, I don't know, stare at my screen for 15, 20 minutes, casually read through emails, think about what I wanted to procrastinate for the day, and just really wait for that third cup of coffee to kick in before feeling like I could be productive.
It's funny because I actually resonate with a lot of those pieces, even not having gone through a large weight loss. I know what you mean between all those. And there's some things you talked about in specific that I want you to kind of come back and hit on, because when I got you signed up for this podcast, I asked what you wanted to talk about. And one of the first things that you typed was weight loss, motivation doesn't work. Consistency is key and discipline established to keep the thing rolling. So what do you mean by that, where you say motivation doesn't work? I know you talked about yo-yo dieting and trying and then failing and trying and failing, or going up and down that 30-pound scale. But what do you mean by motivation doesn't work? And if it doesn't, and you found a way to stay consistent, what was the key for you to actually create or find that consistency?
Yeah, I mean, it's impossible to have motivation 24/7. You're going to have different things that maybe drive an emotional experience that give you motivation, whether that is, I have a very engaging conversation with Clayton and he gives me a nugget and I'm really fired up to, go do this exercise movement that's going to strengthen my hamstrings, right? I'm going to have that temporary motivation to do so that probably not going to have a week or two after we have that conversation. Same thing if I watch a YouTube video or I go to a speech or whatever, that motivation is always going to wear off. And not only that, there's going to be things that obstruct that motivation. For instance, if part of your workout routine is going outside and running and the weather is less than ideal, it's going to be easier to lollygag putting on your shoes and trying to make every excuse to get out there in the world to not do it. And if you don't have discipline and all you're relying is motivation, when that motivation drops down, you will start believing your excuses. But at the end of the day, having discipline is the ultimate excuse eradicator.
How do you develop that?
Consistency and time, man. I mean, it's such a generic answer, and I think that everybody who's looking for it knows that answer, and it seems so trivial, but it's like what I'd like to say is the 1% rule. If you just get 1% better at everything, well, that starts to compound, and it's not, you get 1% better at a week at something. It's not that you're 52% better. That 1% compounds on that 1%. Now, all of a sudden you're 80% better, 3 years better, you're like 500 and something. So, I think that compound interest philosophy applies to everything in life, and I think that's what helps create the discipline. But I think it's important for people to put structure in place, and so you hear a lot of different people in this space that try to motivate people. Write down your goals, and it sounds so generic and it sounds so cliche. But I have to write down my goals. For me, I put it in an Excel spreadsheet because I'm a data geek like that. So, I mean, and that's really where I got started. This year, I'm going to run this many miles and I'm going to do this many races. And I have a goal of being able to run a 5K under 22 minutes. Writing down those specific things with specific milestones is what, helped me get to that area where I have discipline. And I've been using the spreadsheet methodology for years. And I check that spreadsheet, like for instance, in 2025, my goal is to do average 100 push-ups a day. So 36,500 push-ups, right? So if I get 3 or 4 days behind, or let's say a week behind, I look at that spreadsheet. Oh my gosh, I'm negative 700 push-ups right now. So either I got to do 200 or 300 a day for the next several days, or I got to have one crazy day where I hammer out 800 or whatever the case may be. And just having that structure of knowing that in order to attain my goal, I've got to stick with the plan. It just naturally puts that discipline there, especially on the days that I just don't want to do it.
Did you have a point in your life that you didn't have this discipline?
My whole life.
Yeah.
My whole life until I started running. Yeah. Even when I started the weight loss journey, I was just, there's a lot of noise in weight loss, as I'm sure you can appreciate. The diet industry, so to speak, I think really sends a lot of bad messaging, confusing messaging out there. So I'm, trying to absorb all of this and trying to learn how to work out. And I was just a complete mess that didn't have that discipline. But then what happened was, I'm a couple months into this workout, or into this weight loss journey. And I decide, you know what, I really need to start running, because I feel like if I can get up to running a 5K, if I can run 3.1 miles and do that 4 times a week, I'll probably be able to lose the weight, and then I'm going to just stick with it afterwards. And, I'd ran a 5K distance a couple of times in my lifetime, probably cumulative, if you take all the years of running in high school and afterwards, maybe 300-400 miles lifetime, right? So, and at that point, hadn't ran really much in 20 years. I'm 36 at this point, so almost 20 years out of high school, hardly any running. So I started the Couch to 5K plan, and, it has it's very specific in that 4 days a week, this is your workout routine. And then, I got through that. And at the end of a 9-week period, I can run a 5K. And then from there, after a couple months of comfortably being able to do that, it was like, maybe we could do 5 today. And then maybe I could do 6. Maybe I could do. Well, then it turned into, you know what? I bet I could do a half marathon. I think I could do a half marathon. And so then you start thinking, okay, if I'm going to do that, let me look at a training plan. Okay, well, this is very specific. Like if I want to be able to do this half marathon by this time, I can't take, 5 rest days a week. I could take my 2 rest days a week, but I got to be very disciplined. I got to keep. And so through that process of ramping up to half marathon and then eventually marathon, and knowing that I have to do this in order for race day, it started helping me build that discipline. And then that's, really where it started trickling in other areas of my life. It's like, man, my discipline sucks, but it does pay off. Having that structure, having those goals that you write down and you chase with consistency, it does pay off. What other areas can I use that in my life? And I've tried to expand that in every area of my life, whether it's my faith, whether it's finances, whether it's parenting. I mean, my same spreadsheet where I track how many push-ups I do a year, I also track how many daddy-daughter dates I take my daughter on, because I think it's very important for me to spend that time with my daughter. And I could say, yeah, I'm going to be intentional about spending my time with my daughter, but, we're all busy people. The days come and go very quickly. But when I have that number staring at me, I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm trending three below, and then it pushes that intentionality.
I hear people who listen to Joe Rogan on his podcast, and he's like, they'll be like, is all he ever do is talk about jujitsu? Like he just takes everything back to jujitsu. But it's like, once you start seeing it's similar methodology, whether it's you growing this business, whether it's you losing weight, whether it's preparing for your next ultra, like it all goes down to like create a goal, reverse engineer it, break it down piece by piece, and take it one piece at a time. And even like you said, if I want to build my relationship well with my daughter, that involves spending time together. And I'm a busy person running a business and also trying to run multiple ultras. I need to like actually create a system and a structure to set aside daddy-daughter dates that I want to do, but may easily go past if I don't have a system in place. And so it's so much fun to hear people's experiences like your own, and like ones that I've been on and other clients I've worked with, where it's you latch onto one thing, you find it works, and then you slowly watch it bleed into all the other systems of your life ultimately, which is really cool. And also for you guys listening, I do want to let you know, we're not only going to be talking about weight loss today. Matt's got 2 or 3 different like pieces of his journey, weight loss is being one of them, which we're going to finish up with here in a sec because I want to ask him a couple more what I would call spicy questions. Then there's also a food journey where he had a bunch of gut health issues that were related to his allergies. He also suffered through a traumatic car accident. And then we're going to finish out on how he's running like a bajillion miles every week ultimately. And so there's still a lot of pieces to come forward. To come back to the weight loss, the last thing I want to finish on, because I'm just really curious your take, is what is your opinion or what is your perspective on the new weight loss medications and how they're being used? And just honestly, I guess I should just stop talking and say, what are your thoughts on them in general?
How much time we got here?
Yeah, good point. Well, give us the general cliff notes, I guess.
Here's my general cliff notes. I think that if you want to use if PA1 to lose weight, and you have at least 75 pounds of weight loss that you need to achieve or more, I think that using these drugs for a very short period of time to help give yourself a kick, just kickstart the process, get some momentum going, getting some wins, and getting down that trajectory, especially, getting maybe some of the excess weight off just so it's easier to move around. I think it's completely fine. I think that if you are wanting to lose 20 pounds, I think that you need to just run for the hills. Don't even touch them. I think that, if you're a female who fits in a size 3 and you're trying to get down to a size 1, this is not what you need to be on. But whoever uses them, I think that they should be on them for a very short period of time. Like I really don't think anybody should be on them for more than a year. And let me also say, I'm not a doctor. I haven't done any research on this. Is just me happening to own a business where we do offer these types of services and seeing the success of some of my customers and as well as seeing some of the folks who it hasn't worked for as well. Mm-hmm. What I will say is that first off, they have you can have some pretty rough side effects with them, some very rough side effects. So first of all, they're not for anybody. And I think that if you're having a bad reaction, just get off of it worse. But secondly, we don't know what the long-term effects of these things are. So I think that that's another reason not to be on it for the long term. But having all of that said, I think the best way for anybody to lose weight is to just do it the hard way. It's a matter of finding the right way to eat, learning those healthy life habits, and getting some movement. And there's some other things that we could talk about too, like water intake, sleep, environment, things like that I also think have some impact on weight loss. But at the end of the day, it's what you're eating and how many calories you're taking in and what type of activity. And I think that anytime that you lose weight very quickly, you are definitely more prone to gain that back just as quickly. I know that from my own personal experience. When the Atkins diet came out, it became very popular in the early 2000s. That's when I was yo-yo dieting. I could get on Atkins diet, live off of 10 carbs a day for like 2 months, and I could drop 30, 40 pounds. But dropping 5-6 pounds a week is not a healthy way to lose it. And I also think that when you do something the hard way, you're more likely to preserve it. So looking at me now and having I lost this weight 14 years ago and I've kept the weight off for 14 years, mm-hmm. right?
And you're also living a different lifestyle.
I'm living a different lifestyle, but part of living in that different lifestyle is saying, okay, this is more where my weight is today. Here's the highest I would ever want my weight to be. And, when we start hitting Christmas time or taking some vacations or maybe I have some corporate travel that's throwing off a lot of my rhythms and I put on a little bit of weight and then I see, hey, you know what? I'm kind of approaching that top end of the range. I'm getting on top of it then because I don't want to get past that point. I don't want to add 20 more pounds. I don't want to add 30 more pounds because I remember how hard it was to lose it the hard way. Mm-hmm. Which lasted permanently. And if I can just go to the doctor and just get on GLP-1s again and drop the 30 pounds, then I'm not really creating sustainable long-term habits. And so that's what I see with too many people that are don't get me wrong. I could tell you a lot of success stories of people who have taken GLP-1s that had to lose 70, 100, 150 pounds. And they used it and they made lifestyle changes. They're off the drugs and they are maintaining those weights. In fact, they may have even lost more weight since then and are even healthier since they quit then. But then I know a lot of people that have gone on them, lost 50 pounds, and then 6 months later they're back on them because all they really used it was kind of this exotic appetite suppressor where they could just binge on whatever they wanted, 2-3 days a week and then starve themselves the rest of the week by using these drugs. And then in the net they had a deficient calorie intake.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I would agree with you because at the end of the day, it's what are you going to end up with in regards of your routines and your habits and your lifestyle? And there's numerous people, like you said, that they use it as that springboard forward because I understand that when you are significantly overweight, you didn't get there overnight. There's habits that you built in that you're now having to like carve away at. And that's hard.
Yeah.
And so if you can have an assister there at the beginning and say, I want to end up working out 3 times a week. I want to end up eating a healthy like diet. I want to end up doing these things. Can you help me with that? And then a drug can be introduced to help speed that process up or help cut away a lot of the noise. 100% cool. As long as your intentions are to live a healthy lifestyle at the end of it, because we know that if the drug ever has to get taken away and you were dependent on that, then you're just going to go right back to where you were. And so using it as a tool as opposed to like 100% a crutch is crucial, especially because, like you said, at the end of the day, it's an appetite suppressant. It's going to make you essentially less hungry and feel full. And they've done studies on some of the people who have lost weight. And we know that the healthy, not that Ozempic's unhealthy, let me rephrase, the older way of just simply cutting calories and strength training and things like that, generally when people lose weight, 10 to 20% of it will be muscle mass. The other 80 to 90% will be fat, generally. Yeah. When people are going through Ozempic, especially, well, any of the weight loss medications, and they lose a stark amount of weight very quickly, it can be upwards of 2/3 of the weight they're losing is muscle mass. So you may be skinnier, right? You may look more aesthetically pleasing, but you've lost a lot of muscle mass, and that takes way more time to gain back and way more effort to gain back. And so now you're walking around potentially completely malnutritioned. And then there's, like you said, the long-term side effects of low muscle mass, which usually comes along with correlated with low bone density. And then you're going to have another set of health problems in the future.
And then you have the droopy skin, the Ozempic face.
Yeah.
Yeah. You bring up a lot of good points, and I'll just add a couple things. You know, the muscle mass thing is a big problem. Mm-hmm. So the folks that we sell semaglutide and tirzepatide to, we have a scale. It's called a Sika scale. It's like an in-body scan, but it's very more comprehensive. And we coach our people on that. We, give them, tell them, hey, you need to do resistance training while you're on here because you will lose 30% muscle mass if you're not. And we actually monitor through the Sika scale each month. We make them get on that scale, and we're looking at their muscle mass, and we're adjusting dosage. And I think that's a lot of the problem too with these drugs. Is I think that now when you could do have it drop shipped to your house, and you're not actually seeing a nurse on a regular basis, or you're just dropping by one of these fly-by-night clinics that's popped up all over town. They're not monitoring dosage and giving you that coaching. And at the end of the day, I think weight loss is more than the cosmetic side. It's more than just saying that I went from this pound, this weight to this weight. It really comes down to metabolic health. And I think that's the most overlooked thing that when people that are going into a weight loss journey, they're just thinking, probably they do want to feel better, right? And they definitely want to look better, but they're not really thinking the core metabolic health issue, which I think that GLP-1s don't do anything to address.
I would agree. Moving on, I want to talk about this food journey of yours. You had poor gut health and a ton of allergies that you kind of just assumed were going to be there forever. Tell us a little bit about like how many meds were you on? How'd you get on them? And then I guess ultimately, how did you come off of them?
Yeah, great question. So, in my early 20s, moving out of mom and dad's house, and now I'm eating what young people do that are poor and don't care about health, right? So I'm eating fast food. I'm eating lots of highly processed foods. So throughout my 20s, I go from I graduated high school, I was probably like around 150, 155. And, each year, gaining 5-10 pounds, just eating just complete garbage. And I remember in 2001, I started getting gut pain. And the day I went to the doctor was actually September 11th. Like like I was in the worst gut pain of that I'd been up to that point of the day of that event. That day is very, very clear to me. And I went to the doctor, and he says, "Hey, you got ulcers, so you need to be on this medication." So that started down this road that started in 2001. all the way till 2017 of being on at least one daily medication for gut pain, sometimes on multiple ones, sometimes changing around, going from this drug to another drug. I know on one in particular was over $300 a month, just take that monthly pill. Along with that too, around that same time frame, I'd always had some allergy issues, but they just kept getting absolutely worse, where I'd have these just bad sore throats that felt like strep throat, but it was just completely allergies, and just having all the other allergy, congestion and drainage and all those issues. But even when it would get its worst, I'd break out into hives where I wouldn't even want to go to work because my arms were just covered from left to right. And so, at any given point, I would be on 1 to 4 daily prescriptions. Started out at 1, when it was just the sore throat and all of that. And then, started out with Zyrtec, which, by the way, was giving me bad headaches on a regular basis. So I was dealing with that. And then, when the Zyrtec wasn't strong enough, let's add in Allegra,
an entire other medication
right.
stacked on it.
And then, eventually then, I started getting the hives. So let's add on Zyrtec. And I remember even going to the pharmacist that day when I got that. He's like, well, this kind of duplicates what the Allegra is doing. Are you sure you're I'm like, man, I'm just listening to the doctor. I'm just trying to get better. I feel horrible. And, and at one point I'm on 4, these daily medications for the allergies. So that, just kind of sticks with me. And during the bad seasons, I'm taking all 4 at some points, but maybe in the middle of summer, just taking 1 or 2. So this goes on for well over a decade. The gut pain, that continues. That was kind of a little bit of a different journey because it tended to at some points flare up and get really, really bad. So I'd go to the doctor, we try another prescription, and I'd already started my weight loss journey at this point. So, I'm still, I went from 237. I'm walking around at, 170 pounds at this point, lost 60, 70 pounds. And I still have this gut pain that I'm dealing with. And, eventually it leads to, we need to get your gallbladder taken out. Okay. So got the gallbladder taken out, went through the recovery for that. And, I felt maybe 5-10% better. I mean, nothing that I'm like, oh my gosh, that was worth it. That was the magic bullet.
Quite dissatisfying.
Yeah. So, and now fast forward, I question whether I even needed to get that taken out, quite honestly. But in any case, as I wasn't getting better with that and getting second opinions and all of that, the doctor said, well, let's do a CT scan. So I do a CT scan, and the results I remember very specifically. I'm at Best Buy on a Friday afternoon, 4:45, end of the work week, get a call from the doctor, and he says, hey, stuff came up on your CT. We really need to get you a colonoscopy. There's some probability of something going on there. Of course, that Friday, 4:45, the afternoon. Oh, it got left on a voicemail too, because I missed the call. So I sit with that all weekend, make the appointments, go in, fortunately. And for those of you who need to get a colonoscopy, let me just side plug. It's not as bad as you think it is. The day before the prep, that's the sucky part. But really, if you need to get that done, get that done. Anyways, I did that, and it came back clean.
Which, by the way, I have heard, I don't remember if I saw this on TikTok or not, or where it was, but there's been stories like that where like Friday afternoons when people get a bad call, it's like there's some doctor's offices that like have a rule. They do not call patients with like bad news unless it's like deathly and you're going to the ER. Like they don't call them on Fridays. Like they make sure to deliver the news earlier or like wait till Monday because it's like so cruel to be like, by the way, we think you might be dying. We'll call you on Monday. And it's like, cool, just screw that person's like entire weekend kind of thing. I've heard there's been consideration by some doctor's offices around that. Anyway, pick back up. So
I'll send this podcast to my doctor. All right,
yes, please do.
Yeah. So anyways, so this was mid 2017. I had started the weight loss journey in 2011. So, I was healthier, but, I did a lot of, through my weight loss, I started actually when I went through the weight loss journey doing Weight Watchers of all things. And they've changed, and I'm not throwing shade at Weight Watchers, and I know that they've evolved a little bit since then. But at the time it was the point system. And so if I eat this, it's this many points, and this is that many points, and these particular foods are 0 points. But the reality is that I could eat what was lower carb, low fat, I could stay within that point system and maintain low weight. But I was eating a lot of garbage still. But to me, I was eating, lean cuisine.
Yeah.
I mean, it says lean cuisine, and that's healthy, right, Clayton?
Marketing 101,
right,
baby.
Exactly. And so this is where I started kind of learning a little bit, this is where I just started a ridiculous deep dive. So it started, actually, of all things, I saw like 2 or 3 diets on the vegan diet on Netflix. So I decided one day, me and my wife decided we're vegans.
Was it What the Health? Was that the one?
I did see that one. It might have been that one. I can't, man. Any food documentary I'd say that came out during the 2010s decade, I've probably seen all of them at
for
some
sure.
point. So for a period of time, we decided to go vegan, and I'm like, I'm going to do this the exact right way. We're just eating, raw foods from the grocery store, and had this diet lined up. Well, anyways, long story short, we're 6 months into this, and Christmas time hits, and so I go off the rails for Christmas, right? And I'm eating, all the food that my mom and my mother-in-law are making, and all the pies, all the desserts, and everything. And all of us, after about 4 or 5 days of that, I'm like, oh, this familiar feeling is back. Because see, kind of what happened was I was starting to feel better, but getting the feeling better was at a very small pace.
Mm-hmm.
Just maybe 1% or 0.5% better each week. And I got to a point where the gut pain kind of disappeared, and I didn't even 100% realize it. And I just felt like garbage. And I'm like, maybe it's the sugar and the gluten. Because up to that point, I thought gluten was another gimmick, another dieting gimmick. Like I didn't. I thought it was for more of weight loss, not hey, this thing is rotting out your insides type of idea. So at that point, I started reevaluating all of the diets that are out there, whether it be paleo or keto or just anything. And if you do paleo, keto, Atkins, whatever, if you're doing it in its purest form as it's intended, what are you eating? You're just eating whole foods. You're just going to the grocery store. You're sticking around on the perimeter. You're buying your fruits and vegetables. You're hitting your meat section. Maybe getting some dairy on the way out, and that's actual food.
Yeah.
And then start digging more into these documentaries and going down these deep dives. And now I'm listening to, Dr. Rhonda Patrick's podcast, and who is this Peter Attia and Andrew Huberman. And I'm going down all of these holes. And you know what? No matter which direction I go, it all leads back to the same thing, whole foods. And then, obviously from there, you can peel apart more things like pesticides, herbicides, glyphosate, we won't go in that direction. But that's ultimately what I figured out was, you know what? If I go to the grocery store, all I should really be doing on the aisles is condiments and coffee. This is kind of my mentality. Yeah. And, there's going to be times that I need convenience meals, but they should be convenience meals. It should be, 85, 90% of the time I'm eating whole foods first. Granted, inevitably, there might be a time that I'm traveling and I'm stuck in an airport, and the only thing I can do is go get a Quest bar just go eat a couple of Quest bars. That's what I'm going to have to do. But the Quest bar shouldn't be a daily meal just because it's only has 4 net carbs. And I can buy it at the supplement store, so that means it's healthy. No, it's still garbage. So once I got out of all that cleared out, it was like, oh my gosh, I don't have allergies at all. I might have when the weather changes a week or two that I'm sneezing, coughing, but nothing that I'm even getting an over the counter for. It's that mild. And yeah, the gut pain, it's been gone for 8 years. And the only time I ever feel a resemblance of it is holiday. If I go off the rails for 4 or 5 days, have a lot of sugar, have a lot of gluten, I'm going to feel that. But it's kind of, there was also that realization, Clayton, where it's like, oh my gosh, people walk around living like this their entire life. And because they never do that journey that I did, they don't know that there's a difference. And at the same time, they're marketed all of the stuff that's supposed to make them healthy. That's not. And by the way, if they're anywhere close to my age, they also grew up with a food pyramid where we were told, in the late 70s, 80s, we were told, you need to eat more carbs than anything. You should have, two meats a day, and probably shouldn't be red meats. My mother growing up would not allow us to have more than 3 eggs in a week, because it was all in the early 80s. It was all about cholesterol, right? And my mom was just terrified that we were going to get high cholesterol. But dude, I eat 20 eggs a week sometimes now. My cholesterol's fine.
Yeah. Well, it just I don't know. There's so much I want to say. I think ultimately it one, it kills me how much it seems like each decade we have our own like pick of like, what not to eat or what to focus on ultimately. I feel like the current theme is get more protein.
Mhm.
I haven't really found any problems with that in particular because it seems the more research that I've done around it, we're generally all under consuming. I think if you look at the back of a label on like the recommended, daily calories, like 2,000 calories, I think most of those are going to put you should be eating about 30% of your body weight in protein.
Mhm.
So if you weigh 100 pounds, you should be eating 30 grams a day. That's ultimately so that you don't wither away, is what it kind of seems like. If you're not eating at least 50% of your body weight in grams of protein, so again, a 100-pound person eating 50 grams a day, you should be eating about that to stay like good and healthy. If you're trying to gain muscle of any sort, you should be at 70% upwards of like 1.2, so like 120% your body weight in protein, which is like insane for someone to fathom.
Yeah.
Ultimately, that's a ton of protein.
It's not convenient.
No, it's not. But what I like about everything that you've said so far, and what I've found to be the most helpful for people is the whole, instead of cutting out, just focus on what you should eat. And generally that will like push away other foods. So yes, we said avoid, the middle of the supermarket and all the boxed and bagged items. But instead of saying like, just don't eat that and then leaving someone there, we say, go eat these instead, or go focus on this ultimately. And so I always tell people, if you can eat, let's say you're a 150-pound person, aim for 150, knowing that probably feels insane, but at least get 100. So now you're hitting about 65, 70% of your body weight in protein. Focus on that and then focus on fibrous foods of some sort. Usually by the time you get done filling your day and your plate with that, there's not much room for anything else. And you'll notice like certain foods in your pantry start to go bad because you haven't went and picked them up. You went and ate them ultimately.
And you also notice that, what you crave and what you desire for food will evolve. The thought of going home and eating like a simple protein with a couple of vegetables to some people sounds absolutely horrible, right? Mm-hmm. To me, if I've been on the road for a couple of days, I've been eating out, what I am craving more than anything is, can I just go home and grill a piece of chicken, grill a steak, have some fresh broccoli, have some fresh zucchini, and like that is the dream meal that I'm craving. Why? Because my body has been reprogrammed that it knows that it's the fuel. The reality is all these foods that come in the bags and the boxes and that are meant for shelf life. There's somebody who got paid a really big bonus to make that food addictive. We've all many times in our lives, I can't just eat one of these chips. I have to eat the whole bag. Yeah, it's designed that way. But the longer you stay away from those foods and start eating the natural, healthier foods, the more that they taste better. And by the way, you also learn how to cook them better. Right now, some people just don't know how to cook because all they've done is use the microwave and other things. And there's I find a lot of fulfillment and joy in just cooking fresh, healthy foods, or tag teaming with my wife. She takes the vegetables. I go outside and work the grill. But, the reality is that, they do taste good. And I've got a blog out there, injuredbeast.com, where I put up 1 month of dinners that I made at home. And these are all, I don't think there's any dinner that has more than 5 or 6. If you take out seasonings, there's not one dinner that has like more than 5 or 6 ingredients. Mm-hmm. There's very few that take more than an hour to prepare, all with just fresh food, fresh vegetables. These are all filling dinners. By the way, most of these reheat really well. So, when you cook dinner, I have a family of 3. I should make dinner for a family of 6. Immediately box up half of that. Now we've got a couple of lunches, or we've got some food in the fridge. Now 2 days later, oh my gosh, we got this thing going on tonight. As soon as we pick up the kid from school, we got to go here, we got to go there. Instead of hitting the Chick-fil-A drive-through, now we got something we can pop in the air fryer, in the microwave, eat that really quick. Now we're eating healthy food. So a lot of it is just reprogram, kind of that same thing. Building discipline with your food selections, but with time, you'll start to crave that better stuff.
For sure. Let's move on to this accident that you had. Was it in 2018?
Yeah, January 3rd, 2018.
Okay, so tell me a little bit about that. What exactly happened? What do you feel like changed in your life, and how well did you recover?
Yeah, so I'll start by saying, when I tell people this story, a lot of people say, I am sorry that you went through this. That's been rough, man. Just those kind of moments of showing sympathy, empathy, whatever. For me, the way my mindset is today is that is a joy that I went through, that it was a journey that I needed to go through, that I grew in so many ways. So what happened was January 3rd, the company that I was working for at the time had just got acquired by a huge company, right? And our new bosses were coming in the following Monday. So I had this presentation to make, so I was really stressed out going into this new year working for a new company. So I'm working late and get out of work and get in my car, and I'm at the stoplight at 21st and Rock, for those of you guys who live in Wichita. Pretty well-known intersection, but it's 7:30 at night, so there's not a lot of traffic behind an F-150. And I'm actually talking over Bluetooth to my wife on the phone, so I don't really see the guy who's about to hit me, but I just get drilled from behind. I am behind an F-150, so actually more of the damage happened for me rear-ending the F-150 that was in front of me. And long story short, I was actually, my body was in so much shock, I was able to stand up and walk, which a couple days later I couldn't stand, which really crazy.
Those things are wild.
Yeah, it really is. So I had got out of the car. We waited for the police to show up. It was 11 degrees that night. It was so cold. And as soon as the police show up, the guy who hit me, he just flat out admitted, he says, "Hey, I'm just going to let you know right now I've been drinking." And so they did the sobriety test with him, arrested him on the scene. He was, he blew a .3. So in Kansas, the legal limit is .08. So he was just shy of 4 times the legal limit, 7:30 at night. Long story short, I'm really sore. My knees are banged up. I feel kind of like, I probably have a little bit of whiplash. My shoulders are a little sore, and, I go to the doctor. So this is on a Wednesday. I go to the doctor on Friday because I'm having these bad headaches, and I'm pretty sure that I have a concussion. So I go, "Yeah, you got a concussion," but I'm still not feeling any pain in my spine besides that. And then,
which, by the way, I'm sorry to cut you off. I do want to let you guys know, though, if you're in car accidents, it like what Matt is explaining now and what he will continue to explain, very, very normal to have no pain or no problems the day of on quote unquote minor stuff, stuff you're not getting airlifted out for. But the pain to significantly set in a couple days later. We've learned that in PT school, where it's if you need to get some sort of legal help, right out of the gate because you think you may be hurt, that's sometimes a good option because you don't know what the next 2 or 3 days may bring in regards of pain and stuff. Those symptoms may still be kind of setting in ultimately. Please continue. I just wanted to put that in there, though.
No, that's a good call. That was definitely the case. I'd heard that before and didn't really know that, didn't understand that until that Sunday. My wife and I so this is
4 days later?
4 days later.
Okay.
We're at church, and we stand up to leave church, and I immediately fell to the ground. I couldn't support myself, and my back was hurting in ways that, I'd had, a back issue here or there in the past, scale of 1 to 10, probably like a 3 or 4. So back pain wasn't entirely brand new to me. This type of back pain was completely, it took us over 30 minutes to get me into the car.
Good Lord.
And so then that's what really started the journey. And so from there, I went to the old family chiropractor. By all means, anything I say about my old chiropractor, I'm not meaning to throw shade. I'll just preface with that. He works within a system that he was taught, and a system that ran for several years. But I because of this journey, have questions about the efficacy. So I'll just preface it with that. So I go to the old family chiropractor. He does x-rays, and he says to me that, you got a lot of inflammation. There's some things that look a little bit off there. You're about 3-4 months of, just getting adjustments and doing a couple of the therapies that he had in the office from getting better. I'm like, okay, well, that sucks, but 3-4 months, we can hang there. To me, though, at this point, I'd already been running marathons. I was, a member of Orange Theory Fitness, and I was going in there 3-4 days working out. And so in my mind, it's I just lost the one thing that kind of helps keep my sanity together.
Yeah, everything.
So, but anyways, so I start going, I go see him, 3 times a week, and, I'm in there for 2 hours each visit. And he, at the end of 3 months, I'm maybe 5-10% better. Just very marginally. But at this point, my mental health is starting to go down because I'm in so much pain. Plus, I'm not getting any sleep. Plus, I'm not working out, getting those endorphins from working out. So it's piling up. And he says to me, It's probably a little bit more damage into the hood. You need to go get an MRI and we could see what's really there. And then the MRI came back and, we had 7 discs that were impacted. I had two in my neck, C3 and C4. I had 2 in the mid spine that weren't as bad. And then I had my S1, L4, and L5. And
where was your pain at? Like, was there a specific location in your back, or was it the whole dang thing? Top to bottom?
It was primarily the upper neck area, and then the low back area. The mid back, I could feel it there, but the other places were so bad. It was more of an annoyance than it was pain. Yeah.
Well, I ask because they've done a lot of studies where they'll test people or they'll MRI people with no pain. And by decade of life, there's more and more findings that they'll find on MRIs of disc bulges, disc herniations, spondylolisthesis, all this stuff. And none of these patients have pain.
That's interesting.
And so I asked that because sometimes you may not have had any pain or symptoms coming from those couple in the thoracic spine, that mid-back area. They could have been asymptomatic. But when you MRI the whole thing, you're going to find something ultimately. You have plenty of pain, don't get me wrong. And so that's why I was like, okay, you went and got the image. You also have the pain. What actually correlates with each other and what actually matters or what is relevant would be the questions that I would ask ultimately back at that time, right? Retrospectively. Yeah. And so you got the MRI back and you found these things. Where do we go from there?
I found these things. And then I thought, well, I've got a long recovery in front of me. But I just started thinking okay, if I was an MMA fighter and I got in a bad injury, I could probably in a certain situation have the same injury in a fight or in a football game, the same type of impact that was the car wreck. How do these guys get better? And I felt that there's something that my doctor's not doing here. The other thing but before the accident, I had dabbled around a little bit with DDP yoga because I thought I'd seen some viral videos that were going around, and I thought, that'd be a good way to build a little bit of core strength, which would help with my running. Good way to cross train, be cool. Plus, I grew up as an 80s, early 90s wrestling geek. So there was the appeal of having, instead of going to like a traditional yoga studio, having an instructor led that used to be a professional wrestler. So kind of more into it for the novelty more than function. So I asked my chiropractor specifically about, hey, can I feel like I should be doing something to rehab. And he's like, no. And you're going to just hurt yourself worse. Is what he keeps telling me. And so I'm telling him about this DDP yoga. I'm sending him YouTube clips and reading material. He's like, yeah, you're going to get worse. And so I'm like, okay, that sucks. But I think it could work. And so I'm like, you know what? Maybe I just need to go see another doctor. So I went and saw multiple other doctors who were kind of telling me a lot of the same story. But what I had felt at my current doctor was, as I was getting those second opinions, was all these doctors' offices are factory assembly lines. When I go into my old family chiropractor, I go check in, I sign a clipboard, then I go sit at a chair. I sit there for 5 minutes, then I get called back to another room. A nurse asks me a couple of questions. She has me do a few mobility movements. I say pain scale of 1 to 10 on each of these movements. Doctor comes in, talks to me for like a minute, cracks my back. Then I get put on one machine. Then I get put on another machine. The machine that I'm moving to, I just saw the guy that came in before me. He's finishing that up. The guy who came in behind me, he's on the piece of machinery behind me. And we probably all have 3 different things coming in, but we're still on that same assembly line. I'm like, this doesn't work. So I go and I get some second and third opinions, hearing all the same things. And then your boss, I saw that he was having a low back pain workshop at Orange Theory Fitness. I'm like, great. I'm going to go check this out. Listen to what this guy has to say. And so, he really is going hard in the paint on the movement is medicine thing. And I'm like, my doctor is telling me don't do anything. So I'm like, I'm going to give this guy a chance. So, I go and meet with Courtney, and I'm telling him everything that I've been up to this point. And he says, well, we work here a little bit different. I'm not going to have you come in 3 times a week. I'm going to have you come in 1 time a week. And it's going to be more like personal training. You're just going to learn these different movements. I'm going to send you home with YouTube videos so you can do them while you're at home. And every week we'll add a couple of them, and I'll evaluate where you're at on the ones you've been doing, and we'll correct form. And also introduce me to dry needling at that point. But it was also the whole concept of I'm paying him cash to go to this appointment as opposed to going the insurance route, which on the surface looked so much more expensive. But then when you start mathing it and saying, oh my gosh, I'm only coming here once a week. And by the way, that's just for the first month. He's telling me that after about a month or two, it's going to be every other week. And then there's going to be a time that I'm just coming in here once a month. said that maths out as a complete break even. So what do I have to lose? So I also, around this time, Joe Rogan is on the radio on his podcast, and he's talking about cryotherapy. And I'd heard of cryotherapy briefly before this point, but I can't remember who his guest was in, but they were kind of deep diving the subject. I'm like, you know what? I could get in a cryotherapy chamber for 3 minutes. I could do anything. So I start seeing Courtney, and I start doing cryotherapy, and I'm starting to get a little bit better, but I really want, when I start out, the movements that Courtney has given me to do from physical therapy standpoint are very painful. But as I start doing more and more and more cryotherapy, I'm able to get into these stretches. I'm able to get deeper into them. I'm starting to feel them more effective. The other thing that starts happening is, as he's giving me these moves, I'm like, dude, like half of what you're showing me is part of DDP yoga, or it would be very similar. I could see it working my hamstring the same direction, even though my arm might be here instead of there, just kind of those subtle differences. So I'm like, Courtney, my other doctor told me not to do. So I said, Courtney, the plan, I said, my doctor just told me not to do this. What do you think? He's like, man, good. You should do this. Like, you mix it in with what I'm doing with these. So, at that point, I'm well over a year into this journey, and the doctors tell me, and I'm starting to get better, but the doctors really push me towards surgery. He says, right now, you really only got two options. You could do the epidural steroid shots, which I didn't want to do, and then you could do surgery. Well, the one thing that was very complicated about my recovery is I was also dealing with an injury lawsuit settlement from the person who hit me.
Sure, yeah.
And I won't go down that road because that's a whole podcast in itself. But long story short is you got to be very intentional about how you're spending money on care, because at some point it can look excessive. And my attorney is saying, you're going to your chiropractor, you're going to this new PT, you've got all these second opinions, now you're doing cryotherapy, you're doing too much. You need to slow things down, or they're going to think that this is a fraudulent case. I'm like, I'm throwing everything at it because I'm trying to get better and move on with my life.
You're like, I'm trying to get the pain gone.
No fraud involved. Yeah, it's not like I'm doing this for fun or have all this extra time to drive all over town to go. But in any case, so I dropped the cryotherapy, and I'm just doing, and I start noticing the pain kick back in. But my attorney said, you really should do the steroid shots to just show that you did everything that you could. And if you don't want to do surgery, we understand, because that's a little bit different. So I go and do 3 of these shots. And first of all, they mess you up for about a day and a half. You're just on the couch for a day and a half after getting them. And then it worked for about a week, and then it came back to normal. So,
which, by the way, here's another example of medical decisions being made by non-medical professionals, which, not that the medical system was treating you that well necessarily, but whether it was influence from the lawyer, from, people trying to make sure things get paid, or you just, quote, go down the assembly line, like you said, it's just more times where you're getting kind of pushed down go to the doctor, get meds. If that doesn't work, get injections. If that doesn't work, get surgery. I mean, it's just the same play over and over again.
Yeah. And I should have known, when I went in there and got that first injection, I don't like taking anything with steroids because I tend to have side effects from, especially headaches. So I was in the waiting area, and I was just chit chatting with the lady next to me, and she said something to me to the effect of, well, don't worry about this. This is a very easy procedure. I come in every 6 months for them. And in my head, I'm like, I wanted to run for the door, quite honestly, but then I was like, well, I already had the appointment. My attorney really wants me to do this, but I'm like, I ain't coming here for 6 months, every 6 months to do this. At this time, I'm like, 43, 44 years old. I'm like I've got way more life to live than to, this lady's in her late 60s. Okay, if that's what she wants to do, but that's the life she's choosing. That's not the life I'm choosing.
Yeah.
But so then after I got the shots, the doctors came back and said, okay, it's surgery or bust. We're like, we're done here. And at this point, I'm 145 doctor's appointments in, when you count all the physical therapy, chiropractor, general physician, MRI appointments, all that added up to 145. Now, let's backtrack just so that's in May, when I'm told that, do surgery or bust.
So is this a 4-month process at this point?
No, this is like
a year and 4
and
months.
Yeah.
Okay, gotcha.
So when I'm 11 months into this process, this is in November. I hadn't done the shots, the steroid shots yet, but I was starting to see the progress out of the DDP yoga and out of the cryotherapy. I had a day. I had just a really difficult, busy couple of weeks. I had an uncle pass away, who lived in Canada, and I had a cousin who at the time was living in Montana pass away the very next day. This all happened the day I closed on a new house and was getting ready to move. So I had, as you can imagine, I had a very eventful couple of weeks. I had to fly to Montana, drive from there 3 hours to my cousin's funeral. Next day, drive 6 hours to my uncle's funeral. Next after that, drive 6 hours back to Billings, Montana. Then the next day, fly all the way back home. That's a lot of sitting. And at the time, anytime I sat on for a prolonged period of time, like it just flared everything up. Right. Well, also I'd been packing up boxes, getting ready to move and all of that. And bless my wife's heart, she stayed home while I did that trip up to Canada. But when I came back, I was set back. I took a couple steps backwards in my recovery and I was in so much pain. I was just this is where I was in bad mental shape because like the quality of my life had gone downhill. Things that I would normally do around the house, I couldn't do anymore. It was impacting my mood. It was impacting how I talked to people. Everything was just kind of crashing around me. And that particular day, I got up off the couch and it was like that day in church, where I stood up and I just couldn't hold myself together and I fell down to the ground. And I was in just a lot of pain and it just brought on like this crazy, crazy amount of emotion where I'm yelling, I'm crying. It was like the only time I was really bitter with the guy who hit me. You know, I'm like, if I ever see that guy, I'm going to, I was having those moments. And so I'm like, you know what? I just need to go downstairs. So I went downstairs in the basement so I could be myself and just had some time, just kind of quiet, cried it out for a little bit. I had some time in prayer. And, in that time of prayer, I just really felt God tell me, hey, you know what? You're eventually going to get better and you're going to use this to help out other people. I didn't know what any of that meant, but I decided, you know what? I'm just going to start doing some rehab movements. I'm just going to get out some of these tools, get out the bands, and I'm going to just start rehabbing down here for the next hour and a half. While I'm doing that, I fire on David Goggins, of all people, had been on Rogan that week. So I'm listening to, I'm doing this rehab movement, feeling sorry for myself while I'm hearing his story about some of the stuff that he's gone through. And I'm like, okay, you know what? Before I get better, first I got to fix my mindset. And so I really started rethinking about not if I'm going to get better, it's when I'm going to get better. These are the things that I'm going to do when I get better. One of those things was I'm going to run the Pikes Peak Ascent. I'd never done that in my life. The next thing was I'm going to run an ultra marathon. I'm going to run a 50 miler. I bet I could train and do a 50 miler. Now, mind you, I'd never ran anything over a regular marathon, ran 7 marathons before my accident, never had a desire to even go 27 miles, let alone, 31 or 50 or 100 or whatever. But I set those things down as goals because I thought that I had to think with the mindset of what's going to take me to get there, because that's the fun stuff. There's no, I don't know. The getting better is kind of more the necessity.
Yeah, it forces the creation of a plan,
right,
to get that so you can go do the next thing.
Right. So in my mind at that point, I'm like, okay, I'm going to listen to what my attorneys and my doctors are saying all the way up to surgery. And then if it goes surgery, we're going to make a sharp left turn. So May 2019, I'm 15, 16 months, whatever, into this accident, to this recovery. Doctor says surgery. And, I agreed to make a couple of appointments just to satisfy my attorney, but I went into those appointments knowing I was going to pass. I went home and I took out my Excel spreadsheet. I said, all right, this is how many cryotherapy sessions I'm going to do between now and the end of the year. This is how many hours of DDP yoga I'm going to do between now and the year. This is the amount of all these exercise movements and at this point, Courtney had given me like 40 or 50 things. I have like this long YouTube playlist. Like now I just go to it. Okay, my hamstring store. Okay, well, I've got these 6 hamstring ones that are just on here that I can just, start doing. So I just start focusing very intentionally, very updating those every day and just crushing those goals. And then every single week, I'm starting to notice a difference. I start just progress. So from May of 2019, all stuck with this plan all the way till August of 2020. By August of 2020, I no longer had daily pain. It was, I don't want to say completely eradicated because I could still do things to tweak it and get things to come back. But even when I do that, it's never, even 30% of, the pain that I felt back then. And it's something, that thanks to a lot of the movements that I've gotten from you guys at Natural Wellness and all the other modalities that I throw out of it, I can just shake it out.
I think one thing too that makes me feel better, and I hope clients potentially listening can feel better, is you told that story from January of 2018 through August of 2020 and never had to get surgery. And a lot of that, like you said, was your mindset and the team that you built around you. But ultimately, it's like, is if you can find something to latch onto and continually progress, like you can get relief. Sometimes 3 months feels like 3 years. In your case, it was numerous months, if not a couple of years. But if you just keep pushing and find something to stick to, like you can get the progress that you want, and you can also do it while avoiding surgery. Because research shows a lot of back surgeries, when they compare someone who gets surgery and someone who does not get surgery, 2 years later, they're generally feeling better and in the same boat. But again, one had to get spinal surgery and is potentially going to have to face more surgeries to kind of add on to that in the future.
That's the number one reason I didn't get back surgery, because, I don't know anybody who's ever had one back surgery unless they just recently got that first one.
Yeah.
Everybody I know that's had a back surgery, 5-10 years down the road, they're having another one. At that point, I'm 42, 43, God willing, I live to be 80. That could be 5, 6, 7 more surgeries, and here's the other thing too. I never known anybody that's had back surgery that could say they are 100% pain-free because of that back surgery.
I've known a couple, but
Really?
I mean, it's rare. And then it's at the same time, it's like, cool, call me in 10 years and tell me if you are still feeling positive. You know what I mean?
I hear people that say, yeah, I'm better. It's not as bad. But you see still, they don't get up off the couch, as fast as I do when they've been sitting for 2 hours.
Yeah, for sure. And it kind of goes back to almost the comparison with the GLP-1s, not saying that surgery is the easy way by any means at all, but what did you learn through that grueling process of trying to fix the back pain? You built a lot of processes. You realized how resilient your body can be if you put in the slow progress over time and keep showing up, even when you're in pain, even when it's hard, even when, yada, yada, yada. You went through a similar grueling process that created this brain of resiliency of no, I can make it through this. Here's how I'm going to systemize it. And here's how I'm going to build a plan. And then you probably see yourself in other people, clients and customers that come through here, and even just friends and family. You start seeing no, you can change this. I've seen this before. I bet I can help you, or I bet I can guide you to the right person that can help you with this. And so I want to finish out with the craziness that you sign yourself up for now. First of all, I didn't know, but you're apparently 50 years old, which blew my mind. And in this year of turning 50, you signed up for what's called a Grand Slam, and it's not baseball. And so what are you running this year, and what do you still have left in regards of your ultras?
So once I got better from that injury, I decided I'm going to do the hardest thing I've ever done in my life every year until I can't do it.
Oh, gosh.
So 2020.
I'm excited for 2030 then.
So 2020 was the 50K. 2021 was a 50 miler and a 100K. Then 2021, I did the Pikes Peak double, where you do the ascent and the marathon back-to-back days. And then I followed that up with a 24-hour race 2 months later. Then did my first 100 miler in 23. 24, I did one of the most difficult 100 milers around here called the Honey Badger. It's difficult because it is all on asphalt, and it's in the middle of July in Kansas. So where it could be 90, 95, 100 degrees, plus add on the hot asphalt temperature that's coming off of that. So this year I'm 50, so I got to do something even harder. So I signed up for the Iron Will Slam. So a Grand Slam in a 100-mile series is basically 400 milers are in the same year. In this particular case, they're in less than a 6-month time frame. So the first one was May 18th. The final one, April 18th. The final one is September 13th. So there are 4 different 100-mile races. The first one was up in the Junction City area. Then I did one in the Abilene area. And then last year when I did the Honey Badger on the asphalt in the heat, I thought that was supposed to be a one and done until it got put as part of this series. So that was the most recent race that I did back in July. And I'm pretty much as close as I'm going to get recovered from that one and have my final 100-mile race on the 13th of September.
Which this will be released September 8th on Monday. And so if you're listening to this on Monday, you'll have 5 days until he's running his last 100-mile race. You can follow him at, is it injured.beast?
Injured.beast.
Okay,
Yeah.
on Instagram, and then
or just look me up on Facebook. My Facebook profile is public, so anything I
perfect.
post there, anybody can see.
Okay, I'll have both of those down in the link below, so you can just go down and click. He's a crazy person to watch. He tracks everything. I remember one year, what was your longest running streak? You ran like every day, at least 1 mile for like thousands of days.
I did 1,001.
Okay, 1,001.
I just started another one.
Oh, fantastic. This is great. So yeah, I do want to let you know that people are watching, whether or not you know it. A lot of times I'm just lurking in the background, liking your photos. What you're doing is motivating, even to people like myself who some others may be perceiving as motivated because I do work out type of thing. But seeing that consistency shows me that I can strive for more, that I could be doing better, that I could be doing something different, and that it's doable ultimately. And so keep posting what you post. I really enjoy following you on the social medias.
Thanks. I appreciate that.
You're very welcome. Is there any closing pieces of info that you want to leave with anybody before we finish out for today?
Pieces of info. I'll just leave with this. The other night I was at a business dinner and was asked, what if you could do it all over again, what would you do different? And it was kind of an icebreaker event where everybody's like, oh, I would have been an astronaut instead or whatever. And I've really tried to develop a mindset over the last couple of years where instead of thinking about what I could have done different, because we all have those things, even the most successful person in the world has those things. I try to think about what would I want to tell myself if my 5-year self could come back in time. Tell me what should I be doing different now? Have that mentality of wanting to impress myself 5 years from now. And then also taking that a step further, what would I want? What would I say myself on my death? If I could go from my deathbed to where I'm at today, what would I want to be able to tell myself? Because I need to be forward thinking about. I'm 50 years old. I have, very, very little time here compared to, where I started with. And it's more about just what is important now. And, there's a friend of mine who passed away a couple of years ago, Mike Church. Probably a lot of people who listen to this podcast will know who this guy is because he was very big in Wichita athletics in this area. But he had this concept and he passed away, unfortunately, from cancer last year, the year before. He had this motto. He had these T-shirts made that just said "Win the day," and "Win" stands for what's important now. And so, just having that mindset of what's important now, because I think that's also something that helps reinforce me to get busy with what I need to be getting busy now, having that discipline. And we get caught up in all the noise of other surroundings and the things that we can't control, or we have our mind in regret over what we didn't do yesterday or 6 months or 10 years ago. But really what is important now, and have that process of moving towards my 5-year future self and my deathbed future self with that mentality.
I like that. There was one that I heard that's very similar, and it says, when I show up at the pearly gates and God shows me who I was supposed to be, I hope to be looking at the same person.
You had a more succinct way of saying that. Brevity is not my strong suit.
No, me neither, man. Me neither. But when you say it all like that, it brings like a couple of quotes to my brain. So I get to look like the smart one here, I guess. No, but anyway, Matt, thank you so much for coming on. It was fun just for me personally to hear much more of your story and kind of the depths in which you have been through and pulled yourself out of, and where you're striving to go now. Just a refresher, if you want to follow Matt in 5 days from now, if you're listening to this on Monday the 8th, he's going to be running his final leg of the Grand Slam. What was it called again? September 13th?
September 13th. It's going to be called the Iron Will 100.
Where's that one at?
It's just outside of Junction City.
Okay, perfect. And then you can follow him at injured.beast on Instagram. And then you can also go check him out on Facebook, Matt Magnuson. Everything will be linked below. If you want to come get froze and squeezed and all the other biohacking type things, come check him out at iCryo. It's on North Maze Road in New Market Square in Wichita, Kansas. Hopefully today's podcast showed you that you can heal without harm. Matt, thank you so much.
Thanks. It was a pleasure.